It's been 13 years since Disney bought Star Wars, and I want to talk about why they bought it, because the strategy behind their decision is really interesting. Because of course, any studio that could have bought what is one of the biggest franchises of all time would have if they could have. But Disney had a very specific reason. Back in the early 2010s, they were looking at their audience demographics and they realized something. The majority of the people that the Disney brand catered to were women. And that does kind of make sense. If you were to play word association with Disney, the next word you'd probably think of is princess. The bedrock of Disney is of course Mickey Mouse, but it's also Snow White, Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty. Movies that came out in the 40s and 50s. And what Disney as a brand had almost accidentally stumbled into is this generational cycle. Kids would grow up watching these movies, they'd go on to have their own kids who they show it to, and it just passes down the generations. Now obviously the films are for all ages, I grew up watching those films as well, but what they found is as people got older, women generally stayed with the Disney brand, whereas boys and young men generally moved away from it. Now that's a problem for Disney because they want to make all of the money, and if they're only catering to one demographic, that's a huge amount of revenue from the other side that they're missing out on. So when Disney is trying to get properties that will appeal to boys and young men, Star Wars is the perfect franchise for it. It's one of the biggest franchises in the world, it's family friendly, so it fits inside the Disney brand, and it's proven to have generational appeal. Just like the classic Disney movies, people grew up watching Star Wars, they show it to their kids, and the cycle continues. So when Disney bought Star Wars, it wasn't just because it was popular, they were buying into a market that they didn't have, and one that they could grow into the future. We're now 10 years on from The Force Awakens, 6 years from The Rise of Skywalker, and I think it's safe to say from a financial point of view, it was very successful for them. They bought it for $4 billion and Google says they've made $12 billion off it, so they've tripled their investment. And of course, Disney weren't just buying the rights to make a few more movies. It was the rights to make TV shows, to make theme park rides, to make an ungodly amount of merchandise. But here's where it gets interesting. I think it's safe to say Star Wars is in a pretty weird place right now. A lot of people were quite disappointed with how the sequel trilogy ended up, and we've had a whole bunch of TV shows that have ranged from pretty fantastic to absolutely terrible, and there just isn't really a clear direction of where this franchise is going to go for the next 10 years. In a lot of ways, the brand is a little bit tarnished, and apparently Disney is really starting to worry about Gen Z boys. Guys of my generation, aged 13 to 28, aren't going to movies the same way. This is the exact demographic that Star Wars was bought to cater to. Now, Variety have just released an article talking about how Disney are desperately trying to create new IP internally to bring that market back into the Disney brand, which is absolutely fascinating, and I'm very curious to see both what that means for Star Wars and what that means for original movies. Because there was a point in time where you could have just slapped Star Wars on a thing and it would have printed money. And that time is now behind us. I hope that's going to be good for movies because they've already done all the obvious stuff. 7, 8, 9 were inevitably going to happen. And every studio has already looted every big franchise from the 70s, 80s, and 90s for sequels and reboots and remakes. So when they're on the back foot, that means they're gonna have to innovate. They're gonna have to try something new, which could mean new and interesting things for Star Wars. But according to Variety, they're also looking to develop new original properties. Because once upon a time, Star Wars was just an original screenplay. There was no expanded universe, there was no sequels, it was just one movie. And if Disney wants to stay on top, they can't just keep rehashing old franchises. They've got to start inventing new ones. If you found this interesting, make sure to subscribe down below and leave your thoughts in the comments as well.